This video is sponsored by the authentic military online game War Thunder. A man entered a convenience store with a lottery ticket clutched in his hand. He handed over the ticket, telling the store assistant that he had found it beneath one of the seats in his messy van and wanted to check if he'd won anything. The forgotten ticket was crumpled and damaged. The barcode was torn at the bottom. The draw date on the ticket was Wednesday the 11th of March 2009. It was now approaching September. He watched intently as the store assistant squinted at the crumpled piece of paper with meticulous care, punching the numbers into the system, one by one, as the machine beeped in response. Then, a long, sustained note cut through the silence of the store. The man's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the screen, with the word "winner" blinking up at him. The assistant looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. "Mate," he began, his voice tinged with incredulity. "These numbers? They're for the jackpot." Edward had won £2.5 million. But before we get into Edward's troublesome journey, have you ever imagined taking a trip flying across the sky with a historical military aircraft? Well, with this video's sponsor, War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle warfare game ever made, you can dive into the thrill of combat, piloting over 2,000 authentically rendered airplanes, helicopters, tanks, and ships in enormous combined arms PvP battles. Realism in this game is mind-blowing. The vehicle roster in War Thunder is massive, stretching across a 100-year timeline from the 1920s all the way to contemporary models. Each military vehicle is authentically rendered to the last detail, down to their individual components. Battling is a highly immersive experience with the incredible 4K resolution graphics, authentic sound effects, and beautiful music. Your vehicles in the game suffer actual damage to their parts and crew. An X-ray view shows you where your vehicle gets hit in the heat of the battleground. Our favorite thing in War Thunder is the sheer amount of customization options, right down to the historically accurate camouflages and insignias, giving you the freedom to replicate an iconic wartime vehicle or craft a distinctive look of your own. Best of all, it's free! Play now on PC, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and even previous console generations. As a bonus for starting War Thunder by clicking our link, new players and those returning after a 6-month break on any gaming platform will receive a generous free bonus pack. This limited time only pack includes multiple premium vehicles, a premium account, an exclusive 3D decorator for your vehicles, and much more. This offer won't last forever, so click the link in our description and start playing War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox today. Edward Putman had a ticket on a new life, and he knew he had to be very careful not to let it slip through his fingers. He was 42 years old, working as a bricklayer, and had been down on his luck after having done some time behind bars in the past. As he left the store, the ticket now secured in his wallet feeling so much heavier now, he pulled out his flip phone. We got it. However, for Edward to claim his prize money, there were still some hoops to jump through. While smaller prizes could be claimed from the kiosks and stores you can play the lottery, for payouts larger than £50,000, things work a bit differently. When you win a significant lottery prize in the UK, you have 180 days to claim it. The standard procedure is to call Camelot, the organization operating the national lottery in the UK. A winner's advisor will then visit your home. You'll complete a claim form, provide proof of identity to get your age verified, and present your ticket, which is checked for authenticity. However, when Edward phoned Camelot, he ran into an issue. He was initially told that the ticket sounded like it was too damaged to be validated and was advised to send it in for further inspection. Edward wasn't having it. He was persistent enough and managed to convince the lottery operator to send someone to inspect the tattered ticket in person. And while it raised some eyebrows that Edward's winning ticket was due to expire only 10 days later, they nevertheless accepted the ticket and paid out the £2.5 million prize. Edward had become a multi-millionaire. This was life-changing. He wouldn't have to work a day in his life again. With his bank account now full, Edward can begin to look forward to the future. Giles Nibbs was thoroughly unhappy. 6 years had passed since he handed over the winning lottery ticket to his good friend Edward, who had since backed out of his promise to share the jackpot prize. With Edward, it hadn't taken long for greed to set in. Even though he opted out of publicity when he claimed the jackpot, in 2012, he was all over the news for illegally claiming welfare benefits. He had, in the meantime, bought 2 sports cars and a new house. But when it came to give Giles his cut of £1 million like they had agreed upon, he only gave him a lump sum of £280,000 and later much smaller increments that totaled around £50,000. Edward's reluctance to pay more and keeping a huge chunk of the winnings for himself led to increased tension with their once cordial relationship. Giles felt cheated. He began to care less about not drawing attention, openly expressing his discontent to friends and family, revealing details about the lottery, the ticket, and Edward in lengthy one-sided conversations. His behavior slowly unraveling, Giles decided it was time for a confrontation. The situation escalated when he damaged Edward's car, breaking both side mirrors, and took his phone in a desperate attempt to convince him to enforce their original arrangement, threatening to expose a dark secret they both shared, hoping to reclaim his share. However, the confrontation backfired, causing Edward to complain to the police. Giles was arrested for burglary, criminal damage, and blackmail. Confronted with the possibility of 10 to 15 years of prison time with a charge of blackmail, Giles was overwhelmed and tragically took his own life before he was due to appear in court. However, the aftermath of Giles's death and his previous confessions shed light on the dispute, inciting a decade-late scrutiny of Edward's lottery win and ultimately unveiled the truth. And that came with huge repercussions. Giles had indeed given the ticket to his good friend Edward, with 99 more. They had an agreement to split the prize if they won the jackpot prize. Only they knew the numbers had already won the jackpot. You see, Giles Nibs was actually an insider working in the security department at Camelot as a fraud detection worker. And with access to crucial information about the lottery draw, how the organization operated, and detailed knowledge about winning tickets, he had a plan. Working late one night, he had come across a printed copy of a list of serial numbers for unclaimed lottery tickets. Getting close to the 180-day expiration date, it was unlikely that one of the particular jackpot prizes was going to be claimed by the original winner. All he would have had to do was to create a copy of the ticket with the same lottery number and the correct serial number that would verify the win. But he had a problem. The serial numbers on the list had 2 digits blacked out. Giles quickly found a solution. If he could fill in the 2 missing digits with every combination of 0 to 9, he would end up with 100 different serial numbers, one surely matching the original ticket to the jackpot. Making 100 ticket copies of the same winning numbers with different serial numbers, surely that wasn't too much work to never work a day in his life again. But on top of forging the tickets to look as realistic as possible, he had to figure out a way to bypass verification methods for the winning ticket. The damaged barcode was deliberate. This meant that a lottery stand inside a store would be unable to just scan the ticket. The clerk would be forced to follow standard operating procedure, which is to manually check the visible information on the ticket by keying in the date, lottery numbers, and serial number to their kiosk. And if the serial number didn't match, well, the ticket would just be flagged as invalid instead of being flagged as a fake. Nobody would know. Now Giles only had to find someone to go from store to store, trying different tickets one at a time. He couldn't do it himself. Considering his workplace, winning the lottery would immediately be suspicious. He decided he could trust Edward Putman. Edward ended up visiting 29 different stores, presenting a different ticket at each one, getting closer each time one of them was eliminated. And finally, on August 28, 2009, in a store at High Wycombe, an incredulous employee confirmed that his ticket was a grand prize winner. In the wake of Giles Nibs' death, the truth began to come out. During the months leading up to the confrontation with Edward, Giles had talked about how they were both involved in scamming the lottery, explaining how he had made tickets and how Edward was involved to people close to him. And once the truth was exposed, it all went downhill. The story was followed closely by authorities in 2015. Camelot faced a fine of £3 million by the UK Gambling Commission for breaching its lottery operating license. However, the case against Edward, where he was accused of fraud by false representation, came to a standstill when they couldn't find the forged ticket collected by the organization. and with Edward claiming the ticket was genuine, the case was dropped. Since there was no physical proof to the deception, it seemed like Edward would once again get away with it. However, years later, in 2019, a Camelot employee was able to find the lost ticket, and the prosecution was able to continue. The judge who presided over the case said, "Whatever the exact monetary split you and Mr. Nibbs had agreed, you did not pay him what split he felt he was owed. The two of you fell out spectacularly. You have also undermined the public's trust in the lottery itself. You would have got away with this, but quite plainly, you were greedy." Putman was sentenced to 9 years in prison and was mandated to repay almost £940,000 of his illicit gains. Even though he sold almost everything he had at the time, Edward was only able to repay £94,000. As a result, the house that he had bought with some of the ill-gotten prize money was seized for auction. In a twist, the house, despite its derelict condition with fire damage and a portion of its roof missing, was valued at £700,000. The house attracted almost 400 bids on auction and sold for a staggering £1.2 million due to its appealing location. Media reported that even after paying the remainder of his fine, Edward could potentially pocket a whopping $355,000 from his sale, all while behind bars. However, according to the Crown Prosecution Service, the court can still confiscate more from Putman. In the end, the scheme that had once seemed foolproof when Giles figured out how to trick the lottery system became Edward's downfall. And while Edward was able to get away with his crimes for 6 years, his greed got the better of him. Now, it seems he'll spend more time in prison than he ever did enjoying the high life. Don't forget to use the link in our description box to play the iconic military online game War Thunder for free and claim your massive bonus pack with multiple premium vehicles, a premium account, an exclusive 3D decorator for your vehicles, and a whole lot more today.